a 52-year-old woman with ADHD, and it takes a lot, let's put it this way. It takes a lot to really upset me. And so there were people coming for me, and it just kind of rolled off. When I posted something by Dr. Russell Barkley, who is, I'm finding out, quite polarizing to people about his views about ADHD. But his views are his views, you know. So some of it I found helpful, but I am able to kind of take that stuff and sift through it and pick out what I like and pick out what I don't like. And so what I try to do, I find myself in IEP meetings educating, and I'm not saying this to be, what's the word? Snobby, that I'm educating educators, because I am an educator. I have a master's in education, just like most of the people in the room when I'm doing an IEP. And so I'm a professional. And so I, in a professional way, will explain to the people in the room how ADHD can affect a child's learning. And there's a lot of times, especially with clients that I've had this year, where ADHD isn't taken as seriously, or the behaviors associated with ADHD are taken as something that a child can control. And unfortunately, there are plenty of things that children can control, and there are plenty of things that they cannot control. And so, because a lot of times I find it, I am actually, because of my ADHD, I have not done this yet, but I will be going through my client files this year to, or maybe I'll hire somebody to do it. That's probably what I'll do. I will go through my client files and have somebody just catalog the types of clients that I've had. But a great majority of them had ADHD symptoms that were unchecked, and problems related to behavior that were causing the child to not be able to learn because of whatever their primary disability was. And so there's times where I will point out, we are not addressing the ADHD part of this child, that quite frankly, if we eliminated some of these symptoms, and I don't want to say eliminate, but if we were able to better manage this child's symptoms with some very easy accommodations, some very easy changes in curriculum, he would succeed. And so I've been successful in doing that with a few clients. Some schools do not take it well when a stranger comes in and tells them how to do stuff. It doesn't happen that often. I'm usually pretty well received. And I don't preach to people and say, you should do this and you should do that. But I explain how the brain works for ADHD, and I will explain very simply. It's nice when I have a school psychologist in the room, because I see them shaking their head up and down, and sometimes when that happens, I start to recognize this might be a state that the senator or whoever, somebody has laid down the law all the way up at the White House, and it got to the state, and the state has gotten to the LEAs, or the local education agencies, and kind of said something about special education. And maybe there's been some behind the door talk from the superintendent to the principals, and from the principals to, and I don't know always what's going on behind the scenes, but sometimes when they're shaking their head, I'm just kind of like, oh, okay, they know this. They may have been told. And sometimes we don't know that as parents. They may have been told, oh, ADHD kids, let's try not to put them on IEPs because of this or that or the other. And so, but it really is fascinating how easy sometimes some schools, not all schools, can change their tune once you walk in the room. And it's frustrating because this is a law. The Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act is a law. It has if you are the type of person that looks at it, I look at it every day. If you're the type, if you're the type of person, like everybody has a favorite book, a favorite TV show, they can bring up that favorite book or TV show and the exact scene or whatever. I'm like that with the idea. And I think that there are people in these school districts that should be like that, and some that are like that, and sometimes they aren't. So sometimes it is a little bit frustrating trying to get these folks to understand what it is that I need for them to do. So Jay McDowell, we can learn more. We got to do what's best for the kid. Yeah, and that's the thing. A lot of times I will find myself resetting the room because there's a lot of egos involved. This doesn't happen all the time, but everybody knows especially if you're a mom, you can tell when when you're you're sitting in a meeting and like somebody's mansplaining something to you or something like that, and you're just like, sometimes that happens, and when it happens to me and I see that we're just fighting over egos because I know I'm right and this person is just coming up with all these reasons not to help the parent because they're irritated at the parent because that parent sent in 10 emails or whatever, then I try to put the focus back on the kid, and usually that helps. So I fell through the cracks as a child with ADHD. Now as a teacher, I'm so passionate. Yeah, we really need our neurodiverse teachers. I also, Ren, I was born in 1969. There was no ADHD. I like to joke that my parents were like, your ass is lazy. My mother is a retired teacher who will turn 80 this year. And it was very frustrating for me because I had if you're a child with ADHD, you don't know you have ADHD. You assume that you think the way everyone else thinks. And so when you see that there's a child that can do something that you can't, such as pay attention, finish a test, whatever, you take that inwardly as a lack of intelligence thing. And so I really try to stress this in parents to say, remember, how is it that that you're different, that your brain thinks differently than other people? We don't know that in elementary school. We may start to think about it differently in middle school, but really not till adulthood do you start realizing that, wow, this person thought differently and blah, blah, blah. And so it's helpful for parents to really spend a lot of time educating their child on their disability so that their child understands that this is what's going on in my brain. Doesn't mean that I'm any less. It just means that I'm different. Small tangent. Missouri is trying to ignore certain federal laws. Could IDEA be nullified at the state level? No, it cannot. You cannot nullify anything that is a federal law. I'm not an attorney, but what are they doing? Jay McDowell, that would be curious. I'd be curious to know what's going on in Missouri. I have not had any. I keep saying I'm gonna. You know what? I'm gonna do this right now. I am going to print out a map of the United States so that I can mark off the states that I do. Map of the United States. Doggone it, because I will sit here and I'll look and I'll say, I don't think I've ever done a blah, blah, blah and blah, blah, blah. And I don't think I've ever done an IEP in Missouri. And then I'll look in my files and I'll be like, oh yeah, I have. Okay, so now I am saving this image. Anyway, they're ignoring federal gun laws. Oh, well, that's interesting. Well, there's nothing about the idea, the only part of the idea that mentions, I don't think it mentions the words guns, but it mentions weapons, is the part about discipline. So it's funny. I'm going to stop right there and you can figure out what it mentions. It mentions that, you can discipline with guns. No, it mentions that every school has a code of conduct, and typically that code of conduct comes from the state level. And so most of the states use a certain language and they just kind of bite off of each other. And so your school's code of conduct will have, oh, your children cannot fight and your kids cannot bring drugs to school and blah, blah, blah. But there's a clause about weapons. And so that is the only area of the idea I know that may pertain to that, Jay McDowell. So ignoring federal gun laws. Wow. In terms of not allowing kids to bring guns to school. Yeah, it's getting weird in Missouri, huh? Hey, Maud. How you doing, girl? My school is trying to make it very difficult for kids to get IEPs. It is so fascinating because for 10 years of my advocacy work was in a state that handed out IEPs like it was like they're water, like it's and so when I started branching out to other states, I was just like, why is this such a hard thing? And but what I'm realizing is it's the majority of states are not wanting to hand out IEPs like it's water. So this is fascinating to me. Okay, I'm going to save this image. It's all pretty and in color. I swear, y'all. Anybody that's a technical person. Okay, I don't know if you can see that. Look at my, let's see, computer. Okay, look at that. You know where the folder is supposed to show up? Nothing is showing up. I hate my computer. I can't even save the doggone file. I can't even download it. That's it. I feel like it's a lost cause. Where did I start my advocacy? Professionally, I always like to say that advocates are we kind of learn on the job. So, but as a parent, well, professionally, I started with the South Carolina Autism Society in South Carolina. And so I was there for 10 years until we moved here. We lived in South Carolina. My school says kids of color disproportionately have IEPs, so they don't want them getting IEPs. It's funny because it's true. Kids of color do disproportionately have they do get referred for special education more than kids without color. Is that the way, right? The white folks, you want me to say you're without color? Y'all don't typically hear me getting into like the racial stuff. Only because I'm 52. I'm leaving that to the young folks. I just love everybody. Damn it. But anyway, yeah, it's true. If you go on to the IDEA website, you can pull up the numbers. You may have a school that is 2% kids of color, black and brown kids, and they make up 20% of the kids on IEPs. And it's when a school determines that a child is in need of special education, they are taking certain factors into consideration, and a lot of times the cultural factors of kids of color may be different than other kids, and so that doesn't necessarily mean that they are special ed, but I can't, I don't really know what the reason is. Because I have ADHD, I fall into rabbit holes of research all the time. So that's one of the areas that I'm kind of really looking into. But the big rabbit hole I'm going down now is funding. I really want to know more about how states fund themselves with IDEA. Sukino Aiko, I don't see, but I can send you a nice map of the US. I have one. Oh. That's all right. I can print it out. Here's the issue in our house. We have several computers and 2 printers. So my husband's office is downstairs, and every time I complained to him, he actually just called me and told me he was leaving to go to Costco or something. And I'm just like, I like a PC. My husband has a laptop and I have a PC. His laptop, he's got 3 screens. He's 6'4", so during COVID, he was sitting there hunched over looking at a laptop, and then finally, when he got the permission to go back in his office, he picked up his screen. So he has a very nice, sophisticated setup. And over here at Kizito and Associates, my little fledgling business, which I refuse to take any loans for or anything, I am working with what I have. And what I have now is a computer that won't even acknowledge that I have folders or anything. And an 8-year-old on an iPad who's coming in here to bug me. Yes, dear.
An Apple Pencil.
You need the Apple Pencil?
Yes.
Why?
I'm doing something on birthday.
She needs an Apple Pencil. Okay. That's where your mom started teaching. What part? I was living in Greenville. Yeah. Isn't that funny? That is funny. Hey, ADHD everything. Are you talking slow now? You're my favorite. Advocates and lawyers make me so nervous as a sped teacher. Do you have any advice? Well, I can understand why they make you nervous because as an advocate, one of the reasons I changed my title to the IEP Strategist is because I thought that it sounded friendlier than being an advocate. I learned when I started my being a professional advocate, I worked with a nonprofit, and that nonprofit worked with the schools as well as the parents. And so I really learned, and also I've been an educator, so I really learned both sides of it. And what I try to do is not be intimidating to the school. However, let me go ahead and say it. However, the type of clients that I've gotten this year have made me extremely upset with the schools. And so there are times where I am going into an IEP meeting like this, like ready to beat somebody up. But typically, Ren, if you're a special ed teacher, I most advocates that I know anyway do not look at the special ed teacher as the problem. We are looking more at, and I would tell you in a heartbeat of the, I'm just trying to think through some of the most recent IEPs I've done. I've done probably about 20 in the past month, and I mean, the special ed teacher usually isn't the problem. You are doing your job. Typically, the problem is the administrators that either do not understand how the idea works, or they do understand how the idea works, and they're just somebody from somewhere told them there's too many kids on IEPs and you got to change it or something like that. And so they're being very particular. I have had issues with, oh, thank you. ADHD everything. I know you said you do things a different way. I appreciate it, but if you guys aren't following ADHD everything, even if your kid doesn't have ADHD, he's just hilarious to me because you speed up I don't know how you record your TikToks, but you speed up what you say, but I can still understand what you say, what I don't know what that says for me as an ADHD adult. I was just telling everybody I'm 52, so I don't know if we're similar in age. We can't be too far apart, but I can't. The fun part is that I can understand everything that you're saying. Okay, yeah. So what I'm saying is, like, my special ed teachers, I don't typically have a problem. I can think of maybe a handful of times. The only time I run into issues with a special ed teacher is if the child is considered low support needs, which is the new term for higher functioning, which we don't like, but low support needs, and the special ed teacher has a lot of kids or has his or her own children that are special needs that are higher support needs. And so they look at the child who is able to go in gen ed most of the day or whatever as not as needy. And so the expectations are higher. And so the child, as a result, flounders. I've had that a couple of times, but that's not anything that an advocate needs to jump into. That would be more of we just need to sit down and have a talk. You are welcome to Sukino. Would you do work for companies trying to increase their accommodation programs for neurodiverse folks? Yeah, there is a company that I'm trying to connect with right now that would like me to consult, and it begins with a D. And we're talking, to get the information, I have to get off my phone to look at it because it's in a text. It'll come to me. But yes, I work with, I create state specific training for companies that want it, because prior to becoming an advocate, I was a corporate trainer. And so I have an instructional design background, and I used to create classes. I used to take information that companies wanted their employees to know, and I would design classes around them. So people are like, how did you do all that? And then they, if my hair is colored and you don't see any of this gray, then people don't believe me. But because I have the gray hair, I can tell you I worked in insurance for 15 years. Yeah, if you go to my website, I probably need to beef that up. What I try to do is I try to do advocacy during the school year, and then during the summer, I create the training classes. But both, because of COVID, things just kind of meshed together. So I did 2 companies this year where I did their custom training. And now I am, oh, the lightsaber. You guys, I swear, I only saw one Star Wars, by the way. Oh, you record a draft, screen record, put it in CapCut. Oh, I should use a CapCut. My daughter likes CapCut. Um, oh, an existential crisis. Let's come on, Daddy is cute. Come on with the crisis, honey. I will help you out. Uh, Excalibur. Things have changed here. Excalibur. Every time I see the word the Excalibur, I only think about a big old sword being in a stone and me trying to go pull it out in. I think it was Storybook Forest in Pennsylvania, and nobody could do it. Your psychological assessment came in 2 weeks ago. You had an appointment. Dottie, if you don't call us, I know exactly what you're going to say. You can't take it. You don't like the results. The results made you anxious, and now you don't want to talk about it. And you canceled the appointment. Is that what you're about to say? Because you're going. I will call you and show up at your door, and you will go to that. Dottie, it is not. Dottie. Okay, ADHD everything. I need you to stay on here because it looks like we need to do an intervention with Dottie. You called and left a message that's unlikely to get you. Oh, okay. Let's see. So you haven't seen it? You had an appointment and canceled 30 minutes before. You've called and left a message. Is it unlikely to get? No, they're your results. You paid for it. They better give them to you. Why'd you cancel your appointment? ADHD everything. Get out of my comments having commentary with other people. I'm just kidding. I'm jealous. I want Sakino Aiko to talk to me and not you. It's your appointment. I mean, you paid for it. Oh, they canceled it. Oh, yeah, girl, call them, tell them to send you your appointment. I was about to say, see, this is bad. This is why I can't read minds, because I was thinking that you're like too nervous to get your results. You're just call them and tell they canceled. Well, maybe they canceled because the hard part about dealing with some of these places, maybe the person had diarrhea, honey. When you have diarrhea, you ain't going nowhere. You're gonna be by your own bathroom. You can't. I'm just kidding. ADHD everything. You want to be by your own. Don't be angry, frustrated, and sad. Did they tell you why they canceled it though? No, go on over there. Are they nearby? Go on over there and pick it up. Pick up your report and say you want to review it. And they don't have like My Chart or something. That's what we have through Epic, where you can go online and pull up your reports. Roga Miss, what do you recommend to do if you have an issue where your child's resource teacher? I'm just kidding. So you guys can talk. I'm just kidding. Let's see. Your child's resource teacher, so I'm waiting for the rest. That's one of two. Oh, I like that you do one of two. You know what? They're going to change TikTok so you can do. I am nervous, but shoot, I don't want to wait with this knot in my stomach. You know what's wrong with you? Nothing. No, but it's nice to be able to read a thing. Okay, nothing online and nearby. They had something come up. Yeah, I mean, try not to be mad because we all have something come up and maybe it was that person's breakfast or something. I don't know. That's what I try to do instead of being mad. There's a lot of road rage, and a lot of road rage on completely unrelated topic has a lot to do with people who have untreated ADHD. And so when somebody is like going super fast, I give them a story so that I don't get mad. And my story usually has to do with a crying baby or diarrhea. Two of the things that would make me not give a darn who I am speeding past. Okay, like that's not how ADHD, she shut down mode because she's okay. Wait a minute, Roga Miss, let me go back because you said, oh, okay. Doesn't seem to understand that them calling me and asking me to tell my kid to just do the work. Oh, like that's not how to. Why are they calling? Okay, this is what I would do, Rogue. So, you're saying that I'm just telling you, Dottie, Straight up diarrhea. Just assume that the psych had diarrhea all day, and that's why. Because they're sitting there trying to go over your report, and they're like, "Excuse me," and then they got to go to the girl to the bathroom. Have some compassion. But no, I would drive by and pick up the report if you could, see if they'll print it out for you. Okay, so you're asking me. So your child's teacher is calling you to talk to your child about doing their work. We need to have an IEP meeting. Because bye ADHD everything. Love you too. Because that's not how IEPs work. Not only that's not how ADHD works, but that's also not how IEPs work. The IEP is for you, the teacher, to be able to help my child when they're not doing their work. If they're not doing their work, then we need to find out why. And so if anything, I'm not talking to my kid on the phone. No, we're going to figure this out. Let's have a meeting, and we're going to have a meeting. And at this meeting, we are going to go over the steps of determining behavior. And this special ed teacher should know what an FBA is. Now, your child doesn't necessarily need a functional behavior assessment. A lot of schools view that for kids that are having violent behaviors, hitting or things like that. However, some schools use it if a child has anxiety or whatever. But antecedent, let's sit around and go through and figure out what's going on with your child such that they get to the point where they're not doing their work. And then let's figure out what to do about it. So, but as the parent, no, then stop calling me. I will tell them that in a minute. No. And I will tell my child that I'm not going to be talking to you on the phone when they call. Hey, Kim. My name's Kim, too. What are my thoughts on a 67-page IEP? Well, it depends on the BIP's not working. Roga misses the BIP for this type of stuff. If the BIP is for this, then they need to go back and do the BIP. Kim, my name is Kim. I've had a 98, the longest IEP I've ever had is 98 pages. But it depends on the diagnosis, Kim. If the child has, and this child that I had several different diagnoses, and so it was very extensive. And unfortunately, the child had a very short lifespan. So we were really working hard to make sure that the child got everything that she needed in terms of an education. But like they needed a one-on-one, they needed, teachers needed to be trained, and her providers needed to be trained. Like it was very sad, but the mother was phenomenal. But yeah, 67 pages. If it's just a, what's a TVI? Television instrument. Technical video iguana. I don't know what all of these acronyms are sometimes. Yeah, you never. Oh, see, and that's another thing, Rogue. If you've never had issues, that is confirmation for you. Because you end up going to a different school and then they start pulling some mess and they're like, we can't do this and we can't do that. And you're just like, but they did it at the other school. And that's what you need to take into those meetings as a, teach for the visually impaired. Okay. That's what you need to take into those meetings. Look, you may be at this school, but let me explain to you how it's done. Because I am not answering. No, not unless your child's doing well and wasn't doing well in middle school and they never called you and you're just like, I wish they had. But if the child's doing okay, and I would have a talk with, and I would bring the child to the IEP meeting too. So we're all clear, okay? Because your child is old enough to come to the IEP meeting. If they're verbal, nonverbal, whatever, they're sitting there and they're listening and they will learn how to advocate for themselves. Chewy, traumatized brain injury. I didn't see your first one. They're coming in backwards, Chewy, so I'm gonna look for that one. Oh, teacher of the visually impaired. Okay. Oh, all right. Oh, you thought TBI. Oh, okay. She's been coming since 6th grade. Oh, yeah. I can't be the advocate for you. Kim, call me. What's my background? You want to know? I was born a cute little baby in Cleveland, Ohio. On May 22nd, 1969, at the end of the Civil Rights Movement. Hallelujah! To John and Lillian. who are both 80. I was a third girl. You don't want me to go that far back? When people say background, I always want to know, like, how far back do you want me to go? Educational background. Let's see. Okay, well, let's see. I have a bachelor's degree in business administration that I got in 1991. And then I decided I was tired of school, so I didn't want to go to grad. Back in the 90s, you didn't have to like immediately go to grad school. But I went to work. I worked for an insurance company, and it's interesting how all of my experiences have helped me with what I do now, because I was a claims adjuster. And if you've ever worked with a claims adjuster, they're negotiating, right? So I had to really learn how to negotiate. And I would sit in attorneys' offices and be intimidated because they're like representing their client. And here I am, this little 22-year-old girl, like talking stuff about injuries and whiplash and stuff. But then I got promoted because I did internships with General Electric in college. And so I had all this background in spreadsheets. So I was like the youngest executive to be promoted at that company. I got like this, honey, I thought I was it. They doubled my salary in like the first 2 years of that company. I thought I was the stuff, honey. You learn about money and whether or not money matters if you like what you do. Because I was sitting behind a desk for 5 years and hated it. You enter eighth grade this year. It's been such a struggle for her. Really? Has it been a struggle for her? Well, this is, first of all, middle school sucks. I think everybody can agree. Anybody? For me, it wasn't called middle school. It was junior high, and it was 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. But the child is literally being dropped at the time in their life where they need to be held. If you think about it, dropped by teachers, and the expectations shoot straight up for a child to be able to function, executive functioning to be well beyond where they are ready for it to be at age 11, 12, 14. And so they get to middle school and they automatically go from having one main teacher to like 5 or 6, and each teacher's different. And if you have ADHD, some of those teachers are great, some of them are not, some of the expectations. And then you throw a kid in there that has to figure all this stuff out, and you have a kid that's overloaded. It's ridiculous. And so when I have some of my best clients are when I'm going from 5th grade to 6th grade, because I am on top of it. If I have a 5th grader and I see that client, I'm like, nope, we're going to put all of this stuff in the IEP. The best part about that is the elementary school will do it because they're just like, well, we're not going to have this kid anymore. So let's give them like, apple pie every day at 3 o'clock. Let's put that in the IEP, just a joke. But I mean, let's give everything. I will shoot for the moon in a 5th grade transitional IEP to middle school. And then when we get to middle school, we will set up that meeting at the beginning of the year, and we will go over with each teacher. I don't give a darn if it's 8 teachers. I want to speak to each and every teacher and talk about that child and what that child needs and how that teacher teaches, so that we have a good understanding of how it goes. So she's going into 8th. I would absolutely contact all of those 8th grade teachers come August and have a Zoom meeting with them. They seem to think that she's older, she doesn't need all the support. It doesn't matter what they think. When was the last time she had does she have an IEP? Number one. And when was the last time she had her psych eval? And she should be able to do it all with that. Let me just explain something. My daughter, 15 years old, okay? She has been in general education for more than, I think, I forget what the percentage is, but she's been in general education since 1st grade. She's autistic, she has ADHD, she has an IEP. Because she gets straight A's, and I say get straight A's, capable of getting straight A's, because sometimes she doesn't get straight A's because she didn't feel like getting straight A's. But we run into this problem all the time where they have the expectation that she is old enough to know better. And the first thing, and I try to counter this, and I'm going to tell you what to say. You're going to say this exact thing when you go into the meeting. You're going to say to these teachers, and you can all meet with them all at the same time. I don't care. you just need to meet with them before school so that you don't get to November and you're explaining this stuff to them. I did this with when she moved into seventh grade. They didn't want to meet at the beginning of the year. They kept pushing me off. And then we got to October and I'm just like, hello, because they started calling me with the same mess they're calling you with. And I said, this is why I like to meet with all of my child's teachers in August. So I can explain some of the stuff to you that you're asking me about now. If you take this child's grades, now say your child has A's, B's, C's or whatever, and that's really all the federal government asks. If your child is passing, that's good enough for them. If you take this child's intelligence, and we're just talking cognition only, and her autism, and you put it in the same bucket. Oh, I have a bucket. It's my child's squishies that I bought from. If you put autism and intelligence in the same bucket, you have lost the essence of my child. She is highly intelligent. She will be the only one in class that gets the 100 on the hardest math test. She will mess up the curve if they do curves anymore. I don't know. She will be the only one that knows the answer to whatever. This child will also get up and walk out of the class without asking you when she looks at the clock and sees the bell's gonna ring, because she has a serious issue with the sound of the school bell. It makes her anxious. This child, if she has mustard on her face, will walk around with mustard. She'll walk around like this all day long. Mustard. This is lotion. She'll walk around like this. This child who knows better and gets straight A's. Because I would use that as an example. I'm just like, she'll walk around this all day long. And you'll be like, you have something on your cheek. And she'll be like, oh yeah. So you have to be able to explain to people, you have to be able to let them understand your child. Don't let them tell you that they know ADHD, they know autism, they know dyslexia. No. And sometimes they will put, yeah, she didn't always get straight A's. I think she got straight A's this year though. I have to look, but we were home all year too. But sometimes you have to put it in writing. Rogue, I will put it in. I have like a little get to know me sheet. If I ever get my stuff together, I'll get rich off TikTok selling all my little templates, because I have lots of templates that are great. But I have a kind of a getting to know you type of thing about her, which we used to have these meetings with the teacher, and it's like, if she has a meltdown, don't be a hero. My daughter's a little sweetheart. She's a cute little girl. She's I have to get bigger size bras for her. Stuff that you didn't know that you was going to. I was like, oh my God. You mean the starter bras that I bought you at Target that didn't have the stretchy, and they were just small, medium, large? You mean I have to actually go get like real bras? Anyway, so this child, she's 15, but she's about, I don't even think she's 100 pounds. She's tiny. She's very friendly. She can have a meltdown. She had a meltdown yesterday of epic proportions. And so teachers try to calm her down. You cannot calm down an autistic child having a meltdown. So I'm just like, get her out of there. So my husband, like, we give you permission. Send her to the office. You are not, unless you're willing to take up the rest of your class time to calm her. So we just kind of give them that kind of stuff in writing. What to do if she does this, do this, do this. So then I don't get a phone call. Straight up, I do not get a phone call. I don't get phone calls, because as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to refer you to the document that I sent. A lot of times teachers talk to other teachers. Hey, you have such and such Kim in your class, and did you know that she blah, blah, blah. And wow, she had a big old meltdown and I wasn't sure what to do. Oh, did you read the thing that her mother sent? Oh, I forgot about that. That was really good. You should read it. I will tell you, these folks can tell you all day long that they are the experts in education, but you are the expert in your child. Okay. So while I cannot tutor my child in trigonometry, it ain't happening. I stopped helping her with math homework in 6th grade because I didn't have a clue. I can tell you everything about her, and I can tell you what's going to help in your class and what's going to hurt. And if I have that in writing before the year starts and you're calling me about it, I'm going to refer you right on back to the same way you're going to do me. If you sit up there and you tell your class at the beginning of the class that, oh, we're going to have a test at the end of the class, and then they have a test and there's 2 or 3 people like, I didn't know. What do you think that teacher's going to say? I told you at the beginning of the class, so I will do the same thing. Hey, guess what? I sent you a thing. I know one of these days I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Daddy, teachers pay teachers. Yeah, I know. I'm not, see, here's the thing that I love about teachers, and one of the reasons why I do not teach anymore. Corporate training was the thing for me. Teaching kids is not, but I really did like middle school. Teachers, y'all are so organized, and I know there's teachers that say they aren't organized, whatever, but you have these wonderful classroom documents, you have these wonderful ways to impart information, and that is not a gift that I have. I just don't. I just kind of look at my kids and I'm just like, how did I learn? And I try to teach them the way I learned, or teach them the way I wish I learned. I really believe my child is on the spectrum, but according to the school testing, she doesn't. That's interesting. What's testing did they do? That's another thing. Schools do testing. Excuse me, guys. I have one watery allergy eye that waters for 11 of 12 months. From the middle of December to the middle of January, I have no watery eye. And by the time I notice that it's not watering, it starts watering again. Just allergies. But you guys are making me cry. But anyway, yeah. I hope that, what tests are they doing? There's a billion tests that can show, not a billion, maybe like a million, that can show the extent of a child being on the spectrum. But not one of those tests does anything other than, it's not anything from but clinical, meaning it is up to the impression of the clinician that is doing the test. So there's no blood test, there's no pop out a hair and get DNA test for autism. You just kind of look at the person, observe them, ask questions, ask the person questions, and make an educated guess. This is the first year you ever got phone calls. Oh yeah, Vanessa Huxtable. I love that name. Did you know that Vanessa Huxtable and Ron from A Different World were like coupled up? Just random stuff. But anyway, yeah, so guys, did I say I was here till 2:30? Oh my gosh, what time is it? Here's the issue. Oh, okay, I got a few more minutes. I have a hard stop at 2:30 because I have a phone call. This is what I want you parents doing this summer. Okay, there's 2 things I want you to do. If your kid has an IEP or a 504, if your child has a 504, then I want you to pull out the Rehabilitation Act of Section Rehabilitation, blah blah blah, 504, and just look through it. You don't have to read it. It is all in legalese. But if your child has an IEP or a 504 and you want to know, pull up your state procedural safeguards. That's everybody's homework for the year. So get your drink of choice. For me, it will be a Frappuccino if it's now, a glass of wine if it's in a couple hours. And this is your homework. I hope you're taking notes. You can get one of these. You know what these are? A highlighter. You're going to get one of these, a pencil, and you get a piece of paper. And you are going to read through those procedural guidelines. And if you read through those, you do not need to hire me. And maybe I will talk myself out of a job, but I want each and every parent to be very understanding of what those do not go by what the principal said. I love the principal. He's been a principal at our school for 22,000 years, and he gets everybody a turkey on Thanksgiving, and he makes pancakes for every student every morning. He's just the best. But he told me that they just don't have a program for dyslexia here. So I don't care what he told you. And I don't care what I tell you. If what I tell you I cannot back up in writing, I absolutely expect you to question me. I do not, most of my TikToks on here, I am not telling you stuff that I'm just pulling out of my ear. I can back up every dang on thing I say. And every single teacher, principal or whatever that's telling you, whatever they're telling you needs to be able to back it up. Period, point blank. I work in every state. I live in North Carolina, but there is no licensing for advocates. So if you are going to choose an advocate, it doesn't have to be me. I am actually very cheap according to the fact that I have several West Coast clients. I don't know. I have West Coast clients, like most of my clients are in California. They're in California, yeah, because they're like, oh yeah, I charge $250, and they're like, oh, that's nothing. I'm like, oh, I should be changing my prices. I will be changing my prices come January. I mean, come July, but I always work with everybody. But yeah, you don't. There's no what's the word, there's no certification or anything. However, you do, if you're going to choose an advocate, and it's not me, and you're going to pay for somebody, I would suggest that you ask them their background and everything, and they should be fine. Sorry about that. Procedural safeguards, Sakino. So if you're from California, I want you to type California state procedural safeguards. It's the same regardless if you are in LA, San Francisco, San Fernando, San Luis Obispo, all parts of California. Okay, so it's the states. Each state is different. Okay, so they make their procedural safeguards based on the idea, and then they make modifications. So the idea is the big one. The idea is the federal law that applies to all 50 states, but the idea requires that all 50 states have their own procedural safeguards. And what the procedural safeguards are is it basically tells you as a parent, what are my rights for this child? And the biggest thing to get from the procedural safeguards is you have recourse every time the school says no. The school has to give you something in writing every time they say no. Sometimes they don't do that, but your procedural safeguards. And so every time even if you don't even have an IEP, even if you call up you're in the car line and you see the principal, sometimes the teachers don't know, but you see the principal and you're like, hey, how you doing, principal? Thanks for the apple pie on Thanksgiving. You're like, Kimberly, I'm Kimberly. So you're like, I think Kimberly is having some problems this year in school, and I want to have her tested for special education. Boom! That necessitates that principal giving you a copy of the state procedural safeguards. They have this, the minute you even sneeze, special education, they have to give that to you. And so a lot of times they sit in meetings, and for years, my daughter had her first IEP at 3. For years, they would give you, and this was internet. So they said, here's your state procedural safeguards. Would you like these piece of it? And I'm like, yeah, whatever. I never looked at it. Because they make jokes. Oh, if you want some light reading, here's a big thick thing. And I'm like, I don't need it. I don't want it. Then I started reading it. I was like, no wonder they try to play this thing off, because it really outlines everything that they can and can't do. So if I have a client, state procedural safeguards. Oh, sorry, this is going down. If I have a client and a client is in Indiana, yeah, it's not ridiculous. I thought it was, I don't know. It just depends. Oh, Pennsylvania. I'm from Cleveland, Sakino, and I went to undergraduate in Edinburgh, Pennsylvania. So I am well aware of snow. I'm also familiar with Pennsylvania procedural safeguards. But anyway, so if I get a client, say from Pennsylvania, and I haven't looked at that, haven't worked in that state before, I have the confidence level that, from my experience as an advocate, number one, but I have a confidence level in the idea that I know that I can handle that state. I will pull the state procedural safeguards. However, I won't take your case if I don't think I can help. And so I'm not, there are people out there, I think, that would be like, oh yeah, it'll be $250. And at $250 is if you want me to come to the IEP meeting. Most of the time, the parents that I talk to don't need me to come to the IEP meeting. So then I will just charge a lesser fee just to review their paperwork and just kind of give a strategy. Hey, you don't need me at this meeting. Let me tell you this right now. Let me save you some money. Let me save you $100. I don't need to be there. Sometimes they're like, no, I want you there because I don't want to deal with these folks. That's fine too. But a lot of times I'll be like, I don't need to be at this meeting. You can handle this. All you need to do is this, this, and this. And it works out fine. So, but yeah, read through that. Now some states will, Florida is one. You pull up and you can go to like your school's website and just put special ed, and at some point you'll see procedural safeguards. But some states just give you like a generic pulling things out of idea and putting in a document, I can usually tell one that the state has given you enough information. What they're only required to give you like your recourse. So what happens if your child is suspended? What happens if you disagree? A lot of times you have to search for the information, like how many days from the time I signed the consent form does this state allow me to blah, blah, blah. So for instance, Florida, somebody asked me a question about Florida yesterday. And so I said, oh, I'll see if I can find it for you. She wanted to know, I was that series I did on dyslexia where it says, I say that the law says that just schools cannot delay or deny a evaluation by using a response to intervention program. So that's saying, hey, I think my child has a specific learning disability, which is where dyslexia, dysgraphia is. And the school says, I am so sorry, we cannot test them for special education until they complete this 6-week tutoring RTI program. And that's the law says you can't do that. And so she was saying, is that? And I said, some people's IEPs, some states IEPs, I believe it was Ohio or no, Virginia, where it was in the prior written notice. It was in the small print in the prior written notice. But prior written notice is like 2-3 pieces of paper. And so if you're not used to looking at this stuff, like the parent calls me and I'm just like, here it is right here, but I look at this stuff all day. And so I'm like, you don't need me. I'm not, you're not paying me to sit in this meeting and tell somebody something that's sitting here in black and white. She didn't have to. I charged her to look at the paperwork, but I was just like, you go to the meeting and you say, I'm asking for this based on that. And she called me back thrilled. But it's like, it's just like reading. It would be like somebody sending me something in a different language. And I'm already doggone frustrated because I'm a parent of a special needs kid. We are busting our behinds for our kids all day long. And now you want me to read a document? Girl, please. For others, it can be definitely, I know a friend in Michigan that could, yeah, girl, show her me. Her kid's school keeps telling her stuff that even I know is illegal. I cannot stand. Oh, you're in Pittsburgh. Yay. Pittsburgh. So I have to talk about the Browns, the Cleveland Browns. No, I don't. If you are from Cleveland, you automatically hate the Steelers. And if you are from Pittsburgh, you automatically hate the Cleveland Browns. And one of the things I know about the Pittsburgh Steelers is that people all over the United States love them, but only Clevelanders love the Browns. Telling her they don't have to do an evaluation. Do you know how many evaluations that I got for people this year? I did evaluations and IEEs left and right this year, where the client would call me and say, they're doing this and they're doing that. I'm like, do you want me to come to the IEP meeting? Yes. There's times where a parent is talking just like me. They are very well versed. They have a kid in high school. They've had 20 IEPs or whatever, and they're having an issue. And I talk to them and I'm like, you don't need me to come to that. All you have to do is this. And they're like, I need you to come because I'm getting ready to, because I can't handle it emotionally. So I'm like, okay, well, in that case, I'll come. But there's sometimes where I'm talking to a parent and they'll be like, well, I think it's an IQP and then I'm like, okay, I need to come to the meeting because I don't want them taking advantage of you. Because there's times where some of us special needs parents have special needs ourselves. I am an ADHD parent. And so before I knew all of this stuff, I had an advocate. So I was working for an advocacy company, but before I started to learn everything about it, I would shadow her, and she had 20 years experience. I still talk to her to this day. She still works there. It's a nonprofit, and she was my advocate, and I kept her because anytime something bad happened, I cannot guarantee that I'm not going to sit in that meeting and get irritated. Now, I'm not telling anybody off. That's not my style, but I definitely say more than I need to say. And that's just on ADHD. I will just blah, 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 instead of being quiet. Whereas in a client meeting, I am very measured and controlled because I know exactly what I'm trying to get them to say. If I know we're going for like due process or something, I will get them to say, go ahead and incriminate yourself on tape. Okay, let's see. I think I only have a couple more minutes. We have to make a phone call, guys. Your son's being evaluated. Okay, well, reach out to me. Sakina, I will be happy to review your documents. You don't need me there. I can tell you that right now. If you know ADHD everything, you're on it. But the big thing with ADHD, kids getting diagnosed and getting the 504s, I push for IEPs because I want the child to learn the executive functions. And that is where a lot of my advocacy work has been going, because the schools don't recognize that while executive functions are deficient in every child, because nobody's executive functions are fully mature until like 25, 26. In the ADHD child, they're not going to develop as fast, and the ADHD kid needs a lot more practice, and so that can be done. It doesn't have to be like a full-on curriculum. So I will sit there in those IEP meetings and literally spell out how this curriculum needs to work, and hopefully in 20 years somebody will change and they'll like add a class or something like that. They tell her they don't have to do an evaluation so they can switch from a 504. Of course they have to do an evaluation to switch from a 504 to an IEP. Oh my God. Tell her to call me. You're from Nova. Oh, you're from Northern Virginia. Oh my gosh, I lived in Richmond too. Speech time confessions. Oh, I gotta look you who you are. I like your name. What's going on with that? Beyond frustrating when the interventionist clinicians don't read the procedure. They don't read the procedure manual. And if they don't, you know what makes me mad? If I can run circles around, and this doesn't happen that often. Typically, school psychologists are on top of things, but they can't say stuff because they're at the district level and they hear all the back talk like, oh, we got too many, elementary students from this school on IEPs. We got to keep it up, whatever. So they just do their report. They go into just like teachers. A lot of times teachers get out of school and they're like all excited. I'm going to teach. I'm going to change lives. And then they get in, there's all this paperwork and everything, and they get jaded. Same thing with school psychologists or clinicians. And so they're sitting there in the IEP meeting. They're just as quiet. And then I start bringing stuff up. And I can just see the change in their face, like, ooh, she knows what she's talking about. I have seen school psychologists turn off the Zoom and look stuff up because I will pop a link into a Zoom IEP meeting in a minute. I will ask to share my screen. Most of the time, if they're smart, they won't let me share my screen because then I'm like, I'm about to embarrass you and show you your laws from your state. Because if I'm going in an IEP meeting for Pennsylvania, you best believe I'd have Pennsylvania state procedural safeguards. I know exactly which parts that are highlighted that I need. I know the parts of IDEA that I need if they're going to fight me, which doesn't happen that often. But I've had to do that. I've had to sit up there in California. They let me share my screen. And I was like, I'm sorry. I'm about to embarrass you. And I did. But yeah, a lot of times the school psychologist, and that particular school psychologist in California, took his Zoom thing off and was looking stuff up because I know he knew. And then he came back on and he started coming up with a lot of legal terms and everything because he knew that where I was going with it. He knew I was getting ready to have the client file a complaint and turn it over. That's Tessa. That's going into due process. And so he started making all, well, no, we did this and we did that. And I'm like, okay, I'm glad you got it on tape because they knew I was recording it. Dog, coffee, how do you do that when the executive functions aren't in the state standards? Oh my gosh, I love that you asked that question. Because the child the state does have to teach to the state standards, but that only includes the academics. So every state, and this is another thing I always say to parents, my autistic kid has specific things. Okay, so she's looking at the clock at 2. So I know when she came in here that it was 2 something. She looks at the clock and then she will not touch her phone until 2:30 on the dot. And she gives me a kiss. Well, she gave me a kiss early, so maybe she doesn't do specific things. But your state guidelines. So if you are looking, I'm going back on dog coffee, I'm going back a little bit, but if you're looking up say you don't know if your child has special needs or whatever, anybody can type in state guidelines for or Common Core, it just depends on what it is, for whatever grade your child is in, right? And so it'll show Pennsylvania 2nd grade whatever, and it will show the entire curriculum, all the things they expect a 2nd grader to be able to do to like 80% accuracy. But not one thing in there for state standards has anything to do with behavioral, social, or emotional, right? And so that's the disconnect. And dog coffee, I like to say it's kind of like when you buy a pack of hot dogs, they come in a pack of 8, and then you buy the buns, or the hot dogs come in 10, and then the buns come in 8. Like the hot dog people should be talking to the bun people, but no. Hostess is making the buns, or Wonder Bread's making the buns, and Eckrich is making the hot dogs. And if they got together, then maybe the hot dog people would make 8 hot dogs to match the bun people. The bun people would make 10. So it's the same thing with the IDEA and school. Unfortunately, if you're having your child assessed for a learning disability, or for any of the, so maybe it's not a learning disability, but your child has anxiety, and then anxiety literally is making them unable to attend school. They have school refusal. I've seen that, and that affects their learning, so they qualify for an IEP. Well, that's not saying, doesn't show anything on a state document that this child is supposed to be self-actualized and not having anxiety or anything at a certain age. However, the idea states that they are interested in the education of the whole child, and so that doesn't include just state standards. So that's where I will come in and I'll explain, okay, it doesn't need to be a state standard, but and you also don't want your schools looking at state standards to use as a goal for a child on an IEP, but that's a whole other thing. But yeah, so I will definitely say that. I swear elementary school is so much. He said, I know. Rogue Miss, you weren't following me. I'm taking it out on you. Are my eyebrows really like that gone? Like do you know my mother used to pluck off this part of her eyebrows? So now she doesn't have any hair here. And then she would just draw in that part of her eyebrows. So now mine are thinning. I feel like that's what happens. Okay, it's 2:29. All right. Thanks, God. Thank you, Sakino. I am excited. Now I gotta make my phone call. Talk to you guys later. Love you.